Taunton Triathlon done and dusted. That was awesome, and today I'm going to go over exactly how it went for me, how the swim went, how the bike went, how the run went, how I did overall compared to everybody else and compared to my previous times. I wanted this one pretty bad, so let's get straight into this bad boy. This was my third ever triathlon, and it was one that I really tried to train for and properly train for, focusing on all three disciplines and trying to work on my weaknesses and maintain some of my strengths. In the past, I've really sucked at swimming, so much so that I've been followed up and down the pool with a lifeguard just in case I drown. And my run's not much better. The first step and the first goal for me was to not drown and die in the pool and actually make it out onto the bike in a fairly respectable time. The time I wanted was somewhere under 11 minutes. Then the key target for me on the bike was to average a speed of over 30 km per hour. I just planned to gun it as fast as possible because I know that the bike is my strongest discipline and it also takes up the majority of the triathlon's time, so I can make up the most time here. Now, the only risk here was I didn't know the course at all. I know a lot of people do a recce beforehand, which is a great idea, so you know exactly where the turns are, where the traffic lights are, where the hills are, and where the potholes are, but I didn't manage to do that for this event, so biking hard and blind. And lastly, what about the run? I know a lot of triathletes come from a running background or have a strong run, and well, that's not me, but in training, I've really been trying to improve on this, consistently just running much more, but I know I'm not going to get a PB in a triathlon. So the time goal for me was just under 25 minutes for the run, but you never know how your legs are going to feel after stepping off the bike, going full gas and having a death-defying move through the water. Along with these targets, I was also racing against a couple of friends, and this year we'd already done one event together and I came second out of the three of us, and it was pretty close. So it was all to play for in this one, and this was one of the bigger events that we'd all signed up for. And the last sort of goal that I had going into this one was I kind of wanted to be in the top 25% of the results in the leaderboard, or at least in the top half, so above average. Now here's what happened on the day. Did I make it out of the pool alive? How well did I do on the bike? And did I manage the run? Let's start off things with the day itself leading up to the event. So unlike any other triathlons, or any other sort of fitness events that I've done really, this one was in the evening, which meant I had some other decisions around what I was going to do in the day and what I was going to eat leading up to it. And I decided to go for basically a normal day. Nothing too extreme, nothing special. So I just put in for a normal day of work, which to be honest, I kind of regret a little bit in hindsight, because I did about 6 hours on my feet of personal training and strength and conditioning, which probably wasn't the best prep for it. And towards the end of the working day, my legs were kind of aching just from standing up all day. Now, when it came to the food, I then decided again just to have like a pretty much normal day, my usual kind of amount, maybe a little bit more, but not too much more. And I tried to stack this earlier on in the day. So I had an early breakfast, I had porridge, quite a big bowl of porridge, and then I had my usual lunch. And then following that, I just had snacks. But essentially, I just had my normal food, but I tried to have everything a little bit earlier just to give me extra time to digest, so I didn't feel super heavy or anything like that for the event itself. So I went straight from work after this to meet the family, and then we went straight to the event itself, and we got there nice and early. So I could set up my stuff, and my swim start time was 5:23. It was quite staggered, which meant that you don't really know where you are in relation to anybody else, because you've all got different start times, which again has its pros and cons. So on the day, it felt more like an individual time trial, and I was just trying to push as hard as possible and get the best possible time. And then coming towards the end, I would just see what happens when the results come back in. Now going into one of the biggest challenges on the day, the swim. It was safe to say that I was really quite nervous for this, and it was a staggered start, so there was people in the lanes already, but I was called up to put my hat on and jump in one of the lanes. I think there was 2 or 3 people already in there, and the guys that were in there looks like they were going a little bit slower than the speed I wanted to go at. But anyway, the guy that was setting us off said, "What sort of gap do you want?" And I thought, this is perfect. If you can leave me a full length, it's only 400 meters, so that should give me as much room as possible to make sure I'm not bumping into anybody or needing to overtake all the time. So he says 3, 2, 1, go, and then I'm off. The first 100 meters or 200 meters or so feel fine, but then I was on the heels of the person in front, or the 2 people that were in front of me, which then meant that I slowed up massively, and I kind of stayed behind them for a couple of lengths or so. But it got to the point where I thought, I just need to overtake now because I'm feeling almost too comfortable, and I'm purposely going slow just to stay behind them. So I did that. I tried to overtake, but this is where I made a little bit of a mistake. Now, when it comes to swimming and you've got multiple people in the lane, you kind of need to be significantly faster than the person in front of you if you want to overtake, because you've got that oncoming person. So you don't have much time to get round because that other person is coming down the other side of the lane. But I decided to go, so I had to make a really hard effort to get around this person, and I just managed to squeeze through with the other person coming down. Luckily I didn't bump into him, but it was a really hard overtake for me, and so I started panicking a little bit because my breathing was all out of whack. I'd gone from something that was a super comfortable pace to basically trying to sprint for 15 meters or so and then settle down. And after that, my breathing was just all over the place, and my stroke rhythm was also all over the place. So I had to really slow up, and it really threw me out for the next 150 meters or so. I was really trying to steady the breathing down and regain my kind of stroke rhythm, but being out of breath whilst you're underwater, you know, is just difficult. So that was kind of an error on my part, a bit of a mistake, something for me to learn from. If I'm going to overtake, I need to be able to do it a little bit more comfortably than that. But anyway, we made it out of the pool, and we'll check the split times towards the end. So into transition 1, I had everything laid out perfectly. I think I did this really well. I had everything planned for. I even had talcum powder in the shoes because I wasn't going to put any socks on, so I saved a few seconds there. But I did spend some time playing around and messing around with the GoPro, making sure it was ready to record for me on the bike. So all in all, it was probably a slow transition time in the grand scheme of things, but it went pretty smoothly, to be honest, and I was ready to get out on the bike with the GoPro all set up. So onto the bike, the best bit for me, but obviously I didn't know the course. I started out pretty hard, just wanting to get the speed up, and I started pushing that average pace up as much as possible. The legs felt good at this point after fumbling around in the water, so I was pretty happy. The bike course itself was an out and back route, and it was fairly flat, so I managed to spend a lot of the time in the aero position on those bars, trying to be as efficient as possible. Now, the only difficulty was a few roundabouts, traffic, and some traffic lights. Fortunately, I only had to stop once, but I did have to fully stop and wait for a few cars at a roundabout, which is really annoying when you've built up to a really nice speed and a really nice average speed, and you're just waiting there and you can see that average speed drop down. And not only this, you've then got to put down the hammer to build up that momentum again. But I picked it up, I pushed hard, and I was overtaking person after person, and I was just going as quick as I could. I kept looking at the watch and looking at the average speed, and I was doing exactly what I planned to. I was above 30k an hour, and actually the legs and the lungs felt okay. I was sipping on the carbohydrate mix because I knew I had the run to do afterwards. So I averaged just over 30k, I think. It was probably 32k an hour on the way out to the roundabout, and that made me feel really quite confident because I just had to stick with it at this point, and I'd done one way, so I knew there wasn't any kind of unexpected hills, and I pretty much knew the way back. So I carried on as hard as possible on the second half, and then coming into transition 2, I felt good, and I was quietly confident with the bike after overtaking so many people, feeling pretty fast and having what looked to be a good average time on the watch. So now I've just got to not bottle it, and if I smash the run, then I'm probably going to be on for a PB and be in good competition with the other guys that I'm racing against. Transition to itself was a bit faster, but it's probably an average transition time compared to everybody else in the event, but it went smoothly and I didn't have to worry about the GoPro. I chucked my shoes on, I picked up a jelly and went out onto the run course. I had the watch on me showing the average speed, and I was just going to focus in on that, and I tried to stick to a certain average speed. Ideally I wanted to be at 4 minutes 30 per K, but that was kind of my upper limit and that was what I was striving towards. So depending on how I was feeling, I was pushing it more towards the 4:30, and if I felt like my legs were gonna blow up or I was gonna start cramping, then I would just ease up a bit. And coming off the bike, for me, it kind of always feels like I'm on the edge of cramping up, and it could be easy to push it too much in the first half of the run and then just have to walk the rest of it. So I stayed on the cusp of just pushing it hard enough, but not so much that I would blow up, pushing it to the point where I could get a respectable time and know that I've put a good effort in and feel like when I get to the end of it, I've given everything that I've got really, but I didn't take any crazy risks. And that definitely helped. The run course was a loop, so you get to see a lot of other athletes, which is really nice. And I remember saying well done to pretty much everyone I saw, whether I was overtaking or they were on the first part of the run. I would make sure to say well done. And for me, that means if I'm doing that, I'm cheering on other people, then I must be in a good place. The legs must feel somewhat okay and they've still got a little bit in them, which meant that definitely spurred me on just by cheering on other people and knowing I was in a relatively good place. Towards the end of this run, I did have a guy on my heels and I could see him behind me and he was massively gaining on me. And up until this point, I was just really overtaking people. So the swim I overtook people, on the bike I was just overtaking people, and on the first half of the run I was overtaking people. I didn't really have anybody else on my heels or overtaking people. But that's probably because I started off quite early on and I had a slow estimated swim time. But anyway, this guy was massively gaining on me, but that ended up being really good for me because it meant that I had something to push against. And I said to myself, as soon as he passes me, or if he does pass me, then I'm going to go as hard as possible to stay with him. And it worked out to be perfect timing because this was happening sort of the last K, and then into the last 500 meters or so, he overtook me. So I just stuck with him as much as possible, and that pretty much pushed me all the way to the finish line and made sure I was giving everything I've got. And it was pretty much a sprint for the finish line. And what else was nice was the last 400 or 300 meters or so, when you're coming into Taunton school grounds, you go around of kind of their playing fields and you can see the finish line and everyone else is there and there's so much support. And that was really nice. And the little one was there and she came over and she probably ran the last 300 meters with me. So I gave a huge effort towards the end, and crossing the finish line as hard as possible, I knew that I'd given everything I could have done, which is a nice feeling. The two other guys that I was racing started off a fair bit behind me. I think one of them started off 10 minutes behind me and the other one started off 10 minutes behind that, so about 20 minutes behind me. So I could just sit at the finish line and wait to see what sort of times they would come in and what sort of gap there was between me and them, and then we'd wait to see what the results were. But now I have the results, so let's break it down. Let's have a look at the results themselves and the splits that I got compared to everybody else and the guys I was racing in the event. So loading up the results and just scrolling down, I was looking to see my name, and my name did pop up and I was in 40th, and this was on the first page, which is pretty awesome. And then I checked how many people entered and it was 163, or how many people completed it. So I came 40th out of 163 overall. And the time I got for the 400 meter swim, the 21k bike and the just over 5k run was 1 hour, 14 minutes and 20 seconds. So looking at the splits then, my swim time was 10 minutes and 6 seconds. Then my bike time was 36 minutes and 29 seconds. And my run time was 25 minutes and 6 seconds, but that was slightly longer than 5k. So I'm really happy with all of that. The bike was probably a top 10 sort of bike split, which I'm really chuffed with. The run came in somewhere around where I wanted it to, and I managed to survive the swim, which is awesome. But then where did the other guys come? The other two guys that I was racing against. Now looking at the results, they were about 2 minutes slower than me, which was awesome, and there was 2 seconds between them. So out of the three of us, I came first. So I think I ticked off pretty much all of my goals, and it was a really good event for me. It was a nice day, and one of the great things about having an event in the diary or having some sort of performance element to work towards is that it really motivates me and enhances my discipline. Without these sorts of things, without these sorts of challenges and events in the diary, I can be pretty lazy. So that's one important message that I'm personally taking from this, is sign up for these challenges, do these events, and that massively helps with fitness and health because it helps inspire, motivate you, and improve your discipline. So that's this one. Now on to the next one, the big one, 10th of July, Etape du Tour, a stage of the Tour de France. That's my next big event, and I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks for watching this video. If you did watch it all the way to the end and you liked it for any reason, then please hit the like button. It really does help out this small channel. And if you're interested in following my journey and interested in any fitnessy type stuff, then please hit subscribe. And if you've got any comments, any thoughts, you did this event or you're gonna do similar events, then let me know down below. But until the next video, have a really good one, and I'll see you then.